Hello again, little dreamers. Tonight, we return to Lumi's lucky shop in the middle of the city. The candles are glowing, the shelves are full, and morning is about to begin. But Lumi does not know yet that today will bring her first visitor and two very special little cats. Let's begin. The first morning in the city began with pale golden light spilling through the shop windows. Lumi woke upstairs in her tiny room just as the sun peeked over the rooftops. For one sleepy moment, she forgot where she was. This was not her forest cottage. There were no birds singing outside the blue round door, no herb gardens swaying in the mist, no soft forest hush. Instead, she heard the city waking up, wheels rolling, footsteps tapping, a door opening, someone laughing down the street, someone calling hello to a neighbor. Lumi sat up in bed and pulled the blanket around her shoulders. Then she remembered. "My shop," she whispered. She jumped out of bed, fixed her hat, straightened her cloak, and hurried downstairs. The little bell over the door gave a cheerful ting when she opened the shop for the day. Morning light poured in. Dust motes sparkled in the air. Everything looked lovely. Lumi clasped her hands together. "It's really real," she said. Her very first day. She began at once. She wiped the counter, even though it was already clean. She lined up the jars, then lined them up again. She adjusted the tray of lucky stones so the prettiest ones were in front. She moved the courage charms half an inch to the left, then back again, then left again. Finally, she stood in the center of the shop and looked around. Perfect. Well, almost perfect. She lit the gold candle, then the cream candle, then the silver one. A gentle, warm smell filled the room. Vanilla, herbs, and something sweet like warm bread. Lumi put water in the kettle, just in case someone came in and needed tea. Then she waited and waited. The city outside was busy from the very start. People walked past the shop window in twos and threes. A woman in a red coat. A man carrying flowers. A child bouncing as he walked beside his grandmother. A baker's helper with a basket of bread. But no one came in. Lumi smiled anyway. "That's all right," she whispered to herself. "It's early." She sat on a stool by the window. A little while later, she stood up and dusted a shelf that did not need dusting. Then she sat again. Then she checked the kettle. Then she straightened the sign in the window that read, "A little luck, a little light, a little rest." She wondered if that was a good sign, maybe too many littles. Then she decided no. Littles were nice. The morning moved slowly. Lumi began to feel that funny flutter in her stomach again. What if no one came at all? What if everyone walked by and thought, "What a strange little shop"? What if city people didn't want charms and sleepy tea and glowing lights? She looked down at her hands. They suddenly felt very small. Outside, people kept hurrying. One woman looked worried. A boy rubbed his eyes as he walked. A student frowned at a notebook. A man in a blue scarf stopped, glanced at the shop sign, and then hurried away again. Lumi sighed. Maybe Grandma Willow was wrong. Maybe people did need magic, but not her kind of magic. Maybe her kind was too quiet, too soft, too small. She was just starting to feel very sorry for herself when she heard a tiny sound. Mew. Lumi looked up. The shop was still empty. She blinked. Maybe she imagined it. Then she heard it again. Mew, mew. This time she stood at once. The sound was coming from outside. Lumi hurried to the door and opened it. The street was bright and busy. At first, she saw nothing. Then she looked down. There, tucked beside a flower pot by the shop step, sat a small worn-out box. And inside the box, curled close together beneath a torn bit of cloth, were two tiny kittens. Lumi gasped softly. Oh! The kittens looked up. One was dark, almost black, with fluffy fur and wide, serious eyes. The other was pale golden cream, soft and round, with one ear bent just a little at the tip. They were very small, much too small to be alone. The dark one gave another tiny cry. The golden one only blinked sleepily, then leaned against the other kitten as if borrowing warmth. Lumi knelt down at once. "Oh, little ones," she whispered, "what are you doing here?" She looked around. No one seemed to be looking for them. People passed by the shop, busy and distracted. No one stopped. The dark kitten trembled a little. That decided it. "It's all right," Lumi said softly. "You're safe now." She lifted the cloth and very carefully picked them up. The dark kitten was light as a feather. The golden kitten was warm but limp with tiredness. Lumi tucked them into the crook of her arm and carried them inside. The moment the door shut behind them, the shop seemed to change, as if it had just been waiting for more heartbeats. Lumi laid the kittens gently on a folded towel behind the counter. She lit a fourth tiny candle nearby for warmth. Then she hurried upstairs and came back down with a soft blanket. The kittens blinked at her. The dark one tried very hard to sit up and look fierce, though it was not very fierce at all. The golden one made a tiny squeak and rolled onto its side. Lumi's heart melted. "You must be hungry," she murmured. In the little cupboard under the counter, Lumi found a saucer. She warmed a little milk, not too hot, and brought it over. At first, the kittens only sniffed. Then the dark one began to drink, very seriously, with determined little laps. The golden one copied a moment later. Lumi sat cross-legged on the floor and watched them, smiling. "That's right," she whispered. Slowly. When they finished, the kittens looked a tiny bit brighter. Not much, but enough. The dark one sat upright now and looked around the shop as if checking whether it was safe. The golden one climbed clumsily into Lumi's lap without asking. Lumi laughed softly. "Oh, you're that kind of kitten." The golden one answered by curling into a warm, fluffy circle and closing its eyes. The dark one hesitated. Then, after looking all around once more, it stepped onto Lumi's cloak and settled against her arm. Two tiny purring sounds rose into the quiet shop. Lumi sat very still. The purring was soft and deep and steady, the sort of sound that made everything gentler. "Well," she whispered, "I think we all found each other." The dark kitten woke first. It stretched one paw forward, then the other, then stood tall in a way that looked much bigger than it really was. It had a proud little face. Lumi tilted her head. "You're very brave," she said. The kitten blinked. "And very serious." The kitten blinked again. Lumi smiled. "You look like a fierce little beast." At that word, the kitten's ears perked. "Beast," Lumi said again softly. "Yes, I think that fits you." Then she looked down at the pale golden kitten who had rolled onto its back and was waving sleepy paws in the air. This kitten yawned, a huge yawn, far too huge for such a tiny face. Lumi giggled. "And you," she said, "are soft and golden and sleepy and sweet." The kitten stretched luxuriously. "You look like a little lion resting in the sun." The kitten made a pleased squeak and bumped its head against Lumi's wrist. "Lion," Lumi said warmly. "Yes, that's your name." Beast sat by the door after that, watching the world through the glass with solemn eyes. Lion curled up on a cushion that Lumi quickly enchanted to be extra soft. The cushion became Lion's favorite place almost immediately. Lumi looked around her shop. It no longer felt like a place where she was waiting all alone. Now it felt lived in, loved, watched over, protected in a tiny, fluffy way. Beast at the door, Lion on the cushion, Lumi behind the counter. A shop with 3 small, beating hearts. She had just poured herself a little tea when the bell over the door rang. Ting. Lumi looked up so quickly she nearly spilled the teapot. A boy stood in the doorway. He was about 7 years old, with messy hair and a school bag hanging off one shoulder. He wore a blue jumper and held the strap of his bag tightly in one hand. He didn't step all the way in at first. He just stood there, looking. Lumi put the teapot down gently. "Hello," she said in her softest voice. The boy looked at the shelves, the candles, the jars, the lights, then at Lumi, then at Beast, who was staring at him from beside the door. Then his eyes moved to Lion, who opened one eye lazily and went back to resting. The boy said, "Is this a real shop?" Lumi smiled. "Yes." The boy hesitated. "Is it a magic shop?" Lumi thought this over and nodded once. "Yes," she said, "but a gentle one." That seemed to make sense to him. He stepped inside. The bell gave another tiny ting. Lumi noticed that his shoulders were pulled up tightly, almost to his ears. He looked tired. Not the tired of running around all day, the worried kind of tired. "Would you like to sit down?" Lumi asked. The boy looked surprised that such a thing was allowed in a shop. "Oh, okay." Lumi pointed to a small chair by the window. He sat carefully. Beast moved a little closer, then sat down again. Not too close, just close enough to say, "I'm here." Lion stretched, hopped down from the cushion, and wandered over as if this were all perfectly normal. The boy watched the little cat with wide eyes. Lion rubbed gently against his shoe. The boy's shoulders dropped just a tiny bit. Lumi noticed. She knelt a little, so she was not towering over him. "What brings you here?" she asked. The boy twisted the strap of his school bag in his fingers. "I saw your sign." Lumi nodded. "A little luck, a little light, a little rest." The boy looked down. "I think I need the last one." "A little rest?" Lumi asked. He nodded. Then, after a pause, he said in a small voice, "I haven't been sleeping." Lumi waited. Sometimes when people are sad or scared, they need a little silence before words can come out. "My room gets dark," he said, "and then I think about too many things." "What kinds of things?" Lumi asked gently. He shrugged. "School things, tomorrow things, bad things that might happen, things that probably won't happen, but I still think about them." Lumi understood this kind of feeling. She had known it herself on the night before flying to the city. She nodded slowly. "That sounds very tiring." The boy looked relieved, as if perhaps no one had said exactly that to him before. "Yes," he whispered, "it is." Lion put one tiny paw on the boy's shoe. The boy looked down and smiled just a little. Lumi stood and walked to a shelf. She took down a small round jar. Inside it shimmered a pale gold light, soft as candle glow through honey. She brought it over carefully. "This is a calm light jar," she said. The boy stared. "It doesn't do loud magic," Lumi explained. "It doesn't flash or pop. It just glows very softly and reminds your heart to slow down." The boy reached for it with both hands. It was warm. His eyes widened. It's warm. Yes. Will it help? Lumi sat on the stool beside him. It can help, she said. But you must use it slowly. The boy nodded very seriously. How? When the dark feels big, Lumi said, you hold the jar in both hands. Then you breathe in slowly and count to 3. Then breathe out slowly and count to 3. And while you do that, you look at the light and remember this. Right now, in this moment, you are safe. The boy looked down at the glowing jar. Right now, in this moment, I am safe, he repeated. Exactly. Beast hopped quietly onto the chair beside him. The boy looked surprised, then smiled again. Even Beast agrees, Lumi said. His name is Beast? The boy asked. Lumi nodded. He looks scary, the boy said. He would like you to think that, Lumi replied. The boy giggled. Beast blinked as if to say, that is true. And that's Lion, Lumi added, pointing. The boy looked at the golden kitten. But he's so small. Yes, Lumi said. But inside, he is very majestic. The boy giggled again, and this time it sounded freer. Lumi felt something warm in her chest. This was it. This was exactly why she had come. Not for grand magic. Not for thunder. For this. A tired child in a chair by the window, slowly relaxing with a warm light jar and 2 small cats nearby. The boy held the jar close. Do I have to pay? He asked after a moment. Lumi paused. The truth was, shops usually did ask for money. But the truth was also that this was her first visitor. And he looked as if he needed help more than anything else. So Lumi thought for a moment and said, Today, you may take it with you and bring me 1 good night's sleep in return. The boy blinked. 1 good night's sleep? Lumi nodded. When you have one, come back and tell me. He smiled slowly. Okay. Lumi wrapped the jar in soft cloth and tied it with string. Then she added a tiny paper star to the knot. What's that for? He asked. Extra courage, she said. He stood up with the bundle in both hands. He looked taller somehow, or maybe just lighter. At the door, he turned back. Thank you. You're welcome, Lumi said. Lion gave a tiny mew. Beast remained serious, but his tail flicked once. The boy grinned. Then he stepped out onto the bright city street and disappeared into the crowd. For a little while after he left, Lumi simply stood in the middle of the shop. The bell was still swaying slightly from when the door had closed. She looked at Beast, then at Lion, then around the little golden shop. She laughed, a small laugh at first, then a bigger one. I did it, she whispered, not in a proud way, in a happy, surprised way, as if she still couldn't quite believe it. Her first visitor, her first moment of helping, her first city morning. And somehow, before noon, she had also become the keeper of 2 very small cats. The rest of the day felt different after that. Brighter. A woman came in to ask about lucky stones for her daughter's dance show. A baker bought a cheerful charm to hang near his oven. A girl in yellow socks stood at the window a long time and pressed her nose to the glass before coming in to buy a moon-shaped candle. Lumi was still nervous, but now the nervousness had a softer shape, because she knew she belonged here. By evening, Beast had chosen 3 favorite spots in the shop: the door, the windowsill, and the top shelf where he could stare down at everything like a tiny guard. Lion had chosen one favorite spot, which was anywhere soft: the cushion, Lumi's lap, a folded blanket, a basket of clean cloth, a pile of aprons. He did not mind. If it was soft, it belonged to him. When the sun went down, Lumi closed the shop and locked the door. She placed a small bowl of milk for Beast and Lion. Beast drank neatly. Lion stepped in the bowl by accident. Lumi laughed so hard she had to sit down. Then she cleaned Lion's paw with a warm cloth while he looked mildly offended. Later, when the lamps were low and the candles flickered softly, Lumi carried both kittens upstairs. Beast settled by the round window and watched the city lights appear one by one. Lion curled immediately into a small furry ball at the foot of the bed. Lumi sat between them, brushing her hair with slow strokes. "Do you know," she said softly, "this morning I thought no one might come." Beast blinked. Lion snored one tiny snore. "But they did," Lumi whispered. "And maybe tomorrow someone else will too." She looked out the window. The city no longer seemed quite so overwhelming. It was still busy, still bright, still full of rushing footsteps and thinking minds and tired shoulders. But now, in the middle of it, there was a little shop with warm candles, sleepy tea, one brave kitten, one sleepy kitten, and a witch who knew how to make gentle magic. And that changed everything. Lumi lay down beneath her blanket. Beast leapt lightly onto the bed and curled near her pillow. Lion climbed onto her chest for exactly 5 seconds, then decided that was too much work and rolled down beside her arm. Lumi smiled in the dark. "I think," she whispered, "we are going to be a family." Outside, the shop sign moved softly in the night breeze. Inside, 3 hearts rested close together. And somewhere in the city, a little boy was holding a warm, glowing jar, breathing slowly and remembering. Right now, in this moment, I am safe. And now, the little shop grows quiet again. The warm lights are still glowing softly, but the night has become calm and still. Lumi gently closes the door with a small, happy smile, because tonight she met her very first visitor, and somehow 2 tiny, unexpected friends found their way to her. The 2 little cats curl up close together, right by the warm lantern light. One stretches softly, and the other lets out a quiet, sleepy purr. Lumi sits beside them, watching them with gentle eyes. Maybe this little shop won't feel so lonely anymore. You did so well just by listening today. Now it's time to rest. Let your body sink into your bed, soft and warm. Take a slow breath in and slowly breathe out. Remember, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to go slowly. This is your safe place. And just like Lumi, sometimes the most special things come quietly when you least expect them. Good night, sweet dreams, and I'll see you again